The chamber stretched across 300 meters of polished crystal, reflecting light from a dozen different suns. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. The air cycled through 17 different atmospheric compositions, separated by invisible energy barriers. This was the Galactic Council, the heart of civilization, that had brought peace to the known galaxy for over 3,000 years. Ambassador. Dayun Park stood in the human section, her hands folded behind her back. She had been preparing for this moment for weeks, gathering evidence, documenting every violation, building an airtight case. Beside her, Admiral Tae-young Kim waited in his dress uniform, his face carefully neutral. He knew what was coming. They all did. The Vrillian delegation occupied a section designed for insectoid species. Their chitinous bodies gleamed under the lights, mandibles clicking in what might have been conversation or simply breathing. The Vrillians controlled 7 star systems rich in rare minerals and had been expanding their influence for the past decade. They were efficient, organized, completely convinced of their superiority. Dayun had requested this emergency session 3 times. Each time, she was told to file the proper forms, to wait for the scheduled quarterly review, to trust in the process. But the process was designed for a galaxy that had forgotten what real aggression looked like. The Council handled disputes through economic pressure and diplomatic isolation. It worked because everyone agreed to play by the same rules. The Vrelians had stopped playing by the rules. 6 months ago, Speaker Velshara called the session to order. The Thalixian was ancient even by their species standards, her crystalline body showing the wear of centuries of service. Her voice resonated through the translation matrix, reaching every delegate in their native language. The Council recognizes Ambassador Park of Humanity. Present your grievance. Dayun stepped forward to the central platform. Holographic displays activated around her, showing star maps and colony locations. Honorable delegates, I present evidence of 17 violations of territorial sovereignty by the Vrelian hierarchy. Over the past 6 months, Vrelian forces have entered human-controlled space, established unauthorized mining operations on 4 colony worlds, and displaced civilian populations on 3 separate occasions. The display shifted, showing surveillance footage. Vrelian mining vessels descending on New Busan, their massive drills tearing into the surface while human settlers watched helplessly. Families being forced from their homes on Colony 7, the abandoned outpost on Threshold. Its communications array destroyed. 200 colonists simply gone? We have filed complaints through proper channels, Dayun continued. We have requested mediation. We have sought council intervention. Each time, we were told to wait. Meanwhile, 3 of our outposts have gone completely dark. We have reason to believe those colonists are being held against their will or worse. The Vrelian Prime Overseer, a massive creature named Crix, rose to respond. His translator rendered his clicking mandibles into flat, emotionless speech. The systems in question contain resources critical to Vrelian industrial development. Previous surveys were incomplete. We are merely correcting historical oversights. The humans arrived recently. They cannot claim eternal ownership of space they have barely explored. We didn't claim eternal ownership, Dayun said, her voice steady. We claimed what the Council Charter allows. We surveyed, we filed, we settled. These are our legal territories. The Vrelians are not correcting oversights. They are committing invasion. Velshara's crystalline face remained impassive. The Council acknowledges the complaint. We will schedule a formal hearing to review the territorial claims and establish a mediation timeline. This matter will be resolved through proper channels. When? Dayun asked. The next available session is in 6 months. Both parties will present evidence, and the Council will render judgment. 6 months, Dayun repeated. And in the meantime, both parties are expected to maintain current positions and avoid escalation. Admiral Kim leaned forward slightly, his first movement in over an hour. Dayun glanced at him, saw the muscle working in his jaw. They had discussed this possibility. They had hoped it wouldn't come to this. Speaker Velshara, Dayun said carefully. Maintaining current positions means allowing the Vrelians to continue their occupation of our colonies. It means leaving our people in their hands. It means watching them strip our worlds while we wait for bureaucratic procedure. The alternative is violence, Velshara said. War. The very thing this council was created to prevent. Surely you do not suggest such a primitive response. Dayun looked around the chamber. Some delegates watched with genuine sympathy. Others looked bored. A few seemed actively hostile to the human presence. Humanity was new to the council, only 50 years as members. They were supposed to be grateful, compliant, eager to please. She thought about the messages she had received from New Busan. Families separated. Children crying. Elderly colonists forced to march through rain toward Varanian holding facilities. She thought about the silence from Threshold, the empty void where 200 voices should have been. Ambassador Park, Velshara prompted, do you accept the council's timeline for mediation? Dayun took a breath. She had authority to make this decision, granted by the human government after long debate. They had hoped it wouldn't be necessary. They had wanted to believe in the system. No, she said quietly. We do not accept. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several delegates activated their translation matrices simultaneously, creating a cacophony of sound. Then what do you propose? Velshara asked, an edge of warning in her crystalline voice. I propose that humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We resign our membership, all associated treaties, and all obligations under council law. The murmuring stopped. Absolute silence filled the vast chamber. You cannot be serious, Velshara said. No species has voluntarily left the council in over 1,000 years. You would give up access to trade networks, to knowledge sharing, to the protection of council space. We would give up a system that values procedure over protection, Dayun replied. We came to the council in good faith. We followed every rule. We trusted the process, and the process has failed us. Admiral Kim stood, his hand moving to rest on the ceremonial sidearm that human officers wore in council space. It had never been fired. It was symbolic, a reminder of humanity's violent past that they had supposedly outgrown. Crix the Vrilian clicked his mandibles in what the translator rendered as laughter. The humans threaten to leave? Let them. They are weak, frightened children playing at civilization. They will come crawling back within a cycle, begging for readmission. Dayun turned to face the Varelian delegation directly. We won't be back, and neither will you be on our worlds. You have 1 week to withdraw from human space completely. Return our people unharmed? Dismantle your illegal operations. Leave? Or what? Crix demanded. Dayun's expression didn't change, but something cold entered her eyes. Something the council hadn't seen in 3,000 years of civilized discourse. Or we will make you leave. She turned and walked toward the exit. Admiral Kim followed, his boots clicking on the crystal floor. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos, delegates shouting questions, demanding explanations, calling for order. But the humans didn't look back. They had given the council a chance. They had tried peace. Now they would try something the galaxy had almost forgotten was possible. Captain Ginwoo Han was reviewing supply manifests when the encrypted message arrived. His terminal chimed 3 times, the tone reserved for highest priority communications. He dismissed his logistics officer and sealed his ready room before opening the file. Authorization code Crimson stared back at him from the screen. Jinwoo had graduated from the Naval Academy 15 years ago. He had studied military history as part of the curriculum, learned about the old wars, the conflicts that humanity had fought before joining the council. Those lessons felt distant, academic, like studying ancient Rome or medieval warfare. Interesting, but irrelevant. Crimson protocols were not irrelevant anymore. He read through the orders twice, making sure he understood. Then he began making calls. Across human space, similar messages arrived. Fleet captains received them. Marine commanders opened sealed archives. Station administrators activated old communication networks that had been dormant for decades. Within 6 hours, every human military asset in the galaxy knew that something fundamental had changed. The Vrelians noticed the humans, withdrawing from joint patrol routes first. Human vessels that had been operating alongside Council forces for years suddenly requested reassignment. Observer ships that monitored trade routes filed flight plans back to human-controlled stations. Medical frigates that had been providing humanitarian aid across the sector began moving toward Sol, humanity's home system. Crix reported this to the Varelian Queen, Skrakshul. From his command ship near the occupied colony of New Busan, the humans are retreating. Our intelligence shows mass movement toward their core territories. They are abandoning their forward positions. As expected, the Queen replied, her voice crackling through the quantum communicator. They are a soft species. 50 years of Council coddling has made them forget whatever edge they once possessed. Increase our presence on the occupied worlds. Begin resource extraction immediately. File the proper claims with the Council. By the time their mediation occurs, we will have established facts on the ground, too extensive to reverse. Crix clicked his approval. What of their threat? The ambassador's warning? Empty words from a frightened species. They have no concept of modern warfare. Continue operations. On New Busan, Vrelian mining equipment carved into the red soil. Human colonists watched from behind energy barriers, forced to witness their farms and homes being demolished. A young girl named Hannah pressed her hand against the barrier, watching the house where she was born collapse under a mining drill. Her mother pulled her back, whispering that help would come, but days passed, and no help arrived. In the Sol system, General Haewon Choi stood in the Joint Military Command Center for the first time in her 30-year career. The facility had been built during the colony wars over a century ago, and had been maintained but rarely used since humanity joined the Council. Now its screens came alive, showing deployments and asset inventories that made her heart race. Foundry status? She asked. Mars orbital yards are retooling now, her chief of staff reported. Estimated 18 days until first warship production. Luna facilities are faster, 12 days. The civilian transport production lines are being converted. Personnel. Reserves are being activated. We have 2 million veterans who served in peacetime but trained for combat. Another 5 million in active duty can be reassigned from exploration and research duties. Haewon studied the numbers. It wasn't enough, not really. Humanity had spent 50 years building a fleet designed to explore, to research, to support Council operations. Their ships had weapons, but they were light, designed to deter pirates and handle minor skirmishes. Nothing like what they were about to face. Unseal the military archives, she ordered. All of them. Tactical databases, weapons research, combat doctrine, everything we mothballed when we signed the Council peace treaty. Her staff exchanged glances. Those archives contain knowledge from humanity's bloodiest centuries. Strategies from world wars, from colonial conflicts, from the brutal fighting that had marked humanity's expansion into space before the Council found them. General, her executive officer said carefully. Some of that material contains weapons and tactics that violate Council conventions. We are no longer Council members, Haewon replied. And the Varelians violated those conventions when they invaded our colonies. Open the archives. Lieutenant Unibae worked in signals intelligence, monitoring communications across human space. She was good at her job, patient and thorough. It's the kind of person who could sift through thousands of encrypted messages looking for patterns. 3 days after the Crimson authorization, she found something that made her blood run cold. Varelian military channels, usually disciplined and brief, had become chatty. She isolated the relevant conversations, ran them through translation matrices, and felt sick as she read the decoded text. They were planning a demonstration, a show of force to convince humanity that resistance was futile. The target was New Busan, the largest human colony in the disputed region. 3 million people. The Vrelians intended to bombard the capital city, not to destroy it completely, but enough to kill tens of thousands and terrify the rest. Into submission, Yuna forwarded the intelligence up the chain with shaking hands. It reached Admiral Tae Young Kim within an hour. Kim read it in his quarters aboard the flagship Indomitable. He had been admiral for 20 years, all of it peacetime service. He had negotiated trade agreements, led diplomatic missions, conducted humanitarian operations. He had never fired a weapon in anger. He composed a message to Fleet Command. Just one word, when. The response came back equally brief. Soon. The Council attempted to intervene. Speaker Velshara sent official communications requesting humanity's return to dialogue. Other species, some genuinely concerned and others merely worried about disruption to trade, added their voices. Come back, they said. Work within the system. Violence solves nothing. Ambassador Dayun Park, now operating from Earth rather than Council space, received all these messages. She read them carefully, composing individual responses to species that had shown genuine friendship. But her message to the Council itself was brief. The Varelians are planning to bombard New Busan. 3 million civilians. You have the intelligence. You have the capability to intervene. Will you? Velshara's response took 3 days. The Council is convening an emergency session to discuss potential sanctions against the Varelian hierarchy. We urge all parties to avoid escalation while diplomatic solutions are pursued. Dayun deleted the message. She looked out her window at the blue sky of Earth, the world that had spawned humanity and sent them to the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 million people waited for rescue that the Council would never provide. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Kim. Council will not act. Authorization is confirmed. Protect our people. Understood, Kim replied. Fleet is moving now. Cross human space. Warships that had been gathering in staging areas received their orders. Crews that had been drilling constantly for 2 weeks felt the shift from preparation to action. In the bellies of troop carriers, Marines checked their weapons and armor. Equipment that looked nothing like the ceremonial gear they had worn during Council operations. Captain Sung-Ho Park commanded the destroyer. Soul's Wrath. His ship was small by capital ship standards, but fast and heavily armed. He had been reading historical documents for days, studying battles from Earth's past, learning lessons that the Council thought barbaric and primitive. His communications officer looked up from her station. Captain, we have final deployment coordinates. Threshold Station, Vrelian Forward Operating Base. Sung-Ho nodded. Threshold was where 200 human colonists had vanished. Intelligence suggested they were being held there, used as labor for Vrelian mining operations. It was also the staging area for the planned attack on New Busan. Set course, he ordered. Maximum speed. No transponders. Silent running until we reach weapons range. Sir, that violates Council regulations for ship identification. Sung-Ho smiled without humor. We're not Council members anymore. We're just humans. And we're coming to get our people back. The fleet moved through space like a school of sharks, silent and deadly. 23 warships, 40 support vessels, enough firepower to crack a planet. By Council standards, it was a massive military deployment. The kind of force that hadn't been assembled in living memory by human historical standards. It was barely a skirmish group, but it would be enough. It had to be enough. Admiral Kim watched the countdown on his screen. Hours until they reached Threshold. He thought about the faces of the colonists, the families waiting for rescue. The children who didn't understand why the bad things were happening. He thought about the Varelian Queen's dismissal. Her certainty that humans were weak and broken. Ma'am, he said quietly to the empty air, addressing an enemy who couldn't hear him. You're about to learn something important. Humans didn't forget how to fight. We just chose not to. There's a difference. The fleet jumped to faster than light, and the galaxy held its breath. Threshold Station hung in space like a small moon, its surface covered in docking platforms and mining equipment. Varian vessels moved around it in organized patterns, hauling ore and supplies. The station housed 40,000 Varelians, a mix of workers, administrators, and military personnel. Deep in its lower levels, 200 human colonists worked under guard. Processing minerals for their captors, the Varelian Defense Fleet consisted of 18 warships, distributed in a standard Council protection formation. The commanders had never fought a real battle. They had trained in simulations, practiced maneuvers, learned the protocols that the Council had established for theoretical conflicts that never happened. When the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge, the Vrelians detected them immediately. Commander Threx, the senior Vrelian officer, studied the sensor readings with confusion. 23 human warships approaching at combat speed. No transponder signals, no communication attempts. "Them," he ordered. "Demand identification and purpose." Communication officer tried. No response came from the human vessels. They simply continued their approach, acceleration building, spreading into an attack formation that looked nothing like Council-approved defensive patterns. Threx felt the first stirring of concern. Alert the fleet. Battle stations. Activate shields. On the bridge of Soul's Wrath, Captain Sung-Ho Park watched Threshold Station grow larger on his screens. His tactical officer had marked every Vrelian ship, calculated firing solutions, and identified priority targets. Everything was ready. "Captain," his communications officer said, "the Vrelians are hailing us. They demand we identify ourselves and state our intentions." Sung-Ho thought about the protocols, the procedures, the civilized rules of engagement that the Council required. He thought about 200 humans imprisoned below, about families torn apart, about a little girl watching her home destroyed. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies, no encryption." The channel activated. Sung-Ho spoke 4 words, his voice cold and clear. "You took our homes." Then he closed the channel and looked at his weapons officer. "Fire." Soul's Wrath spoke first, but the entire human fleet opened fire within seconds. Magnetic accelerator cannons launched projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles with guidance systems far more sophisticated than Council weapons screamed toward their targets. Energy beams designed to punch through armor. Rather than disable shields lanced across the void. The Vrelian ships had shields. They had armor. They had weapons of their own. But they had never faced an enemy that approached combat as a science of destruction rather than a theoretical exercise in deterrence. The first Vrelian cruiser died in 8 seconds. Its shields collapsed under concentrated fire from 3 human destroyers. Armor meant to withstand meteor strikes vaporized under sustained energy weapon bombardment. The ship broke apart, atmosphere venting. Crew dying before they could reach escape pods. Threx watched in horror as his fleet began to disintegrate. He ordered return fire, but his ships were designed for the kind of measured, limited engagement the Council permitted. Human vessels dodged with precision, their electronic warfare suites blinding Vrelian targeting systems, creating false images and phantom ships. "They're everywhere," his tactical officer shouted. "Sensors can't lock on." A human frigate, smaller than anything in Threx's fleet, slipped past his formation and launched a spread of missiles directly at his command ship. Point Defense tried to intercept them, destroying 6. The 7th got through, punching into the engineering section and detonating deep inside the ship. Power fluctuated, backup systems screaming alerts. Admiral Taeyong Kim watched from the Indomitable, his flagship holding back from the initial assault. He wasn't here to risk his life unnecessarily. He was here to win, to send a message, to rescue his people. His fleet executed their battle plan with brutal efficiency, each ship knowing its role. Every captain, willing to take calculated risks that would horrify Council observers, 17 minutes after the first shot. The Vrelian defense fleet was gone. Some ships were destroyed, tumbling wrecks that would burn up in the nearby star's gravity well. Others were crippled, their crews abandoning ship in escape pods that human recovery vessels were already moving to collect. The rest had fled, jumping too faster than light without bothering to coordinate. Running blind into deep space, Threx sat in his command chair, emergency lighting casting shadows across his broken bridge. His ship was dying around him. He had lost 18 ships, thousands of crew, in his career in 17 minutes of actual combat. A human voice crackled through his damaged communications system. "Vrelian Commander, this is Admiral Kim of the human fleet. Your military presence in this system is neutralized. We are moving on Threshold Station. I suggest you order evacuation." Threx clicked his mandibles weakly. You cannot attack the station. It is a civilian installation. Council law strictly prohibits. We are not council members, Kim interrupted. We are independent. We are at war. And you have 5 minutes to begin evacuation before we open fire. On Threshold Station, panic spread through the corridors. Administrator Velkix received the ultimatum and immediately ordered evacuation. Workers ran for the escape pods, abandoning equipment and personal belongings. The station had enough pods for everyone, a council requirement. But coordinating 40,000 evacuees in 5 minutes was impossible, Commander. One song aboard the carrier Indomitable tracked the evacuation progress. Pods were launching, but slowly, too slowly. The 5-minute deadline approached. She looked at Admiral Kim. Sir, they're still evacuating. Maybe 20,000 still aboard. Kim felt the weight of the decision. He could wait, give them more time. But every minute they delayed was a minute the Vrelians could use to organize. To call for reinforcements. To prepare a counterattack. This was war. War demanded hard choices. Target the docking platforms and mining equipment, he ordered. Avoid the habitation sections. Fire on my mark. At 4 minutes and 58 seconds, the human fleet opened fire on Threshold Station. Magnetic accelerator rounds tore into the industrial sections, destroying our processors and refining equipment. Missiles struck docking platforms, sending them tumbling into space. Energy beams melted, communication arrays and sensor networks. Inside the station, Vrelians felt the impacts, heard the screams of tearing metal, saw corridors buckle and compress, but the human targeting was precise. The residential areas remained untouched. The escape pod bays stayed operational. The humans were destroying infrastructure, not committing massacre. Velkex finally understood. The humans were serious. This wasn't posturing, wasn't threats meant to bring the Vrelians back to negotiation. This was actual warfare, prosecuted with terrifying competence. Surrender, he transmitted on all frequencies. We surrender. Cease fire. We are evacuating. The human bombardment stopped immediately. The sudden silence was almost as shocking as the violence had been. Within 30 minutes, Threshold Station was empty except for the human colonists still imprisoned in the lower levels. Marine dropships launched from human carriers. Armored soldiers breaching the hull and moving through the abandoned corridors with weapons ready. Sergeant, Minji Wang led her squad through the detention level. They found the colonists in converted cargo bays, families huddled together, faces gaunt from poor rations and stress. When they saw the Marines, several started crying. We're here to bring you home, Minji said, pulling off her helmet so they could see her face. You're safe now. An elderly man stepped forward, his voice shaking. We thought you weren't coming. We thought the council would stop you. Council isn't our concern anymore, Minji replied. You are. Across the galaxy, council observers who had been monitoring the engagement sat in stunned silence. The recordings showed 17 minutes of combat that violated every convention they had established. The humans had fought to destroy, not to disable. They had used tactics that were technically legal but morally questionable by council standards. They had won decisively, brutally, with a level of military competence that no current council species possessed. Counselor. The Xmara of the Quilarian Union recorded an official protest. This is barbarism. This is murder. The council must intervene immediately. Admiral Kim's response was broadcast across all frequencies, ensuring every species could hear it. We operated outside council jurisdiction against an enemy that invaded our territory and imprisoned our citizens. This was an independent bilateral conflict. The council chose not to intervene when we requested help. You do not get to intervene now that we have helped ourselves. Speaker Velshara convened emergency sessions. Delegates argued for hours about protocols, about precedents, about the fundamental threat to galactic order. But their bureaucratic processes moved slowly. Committees debating while human fleets moved fast. On Earth, President Jae Sun-ka watched the after-action reports. The Vrelians had lost 18 warships and a major forward operating base. Humans had suffered damage to 3 vessels, minor injuries to 24 crew members, and 0 fatalities. The colonists were being transported to safety, and Threshold Station was now in human hands. What's our next move? His chief of staff asked. Ko looked at the star charts, at the Vrelian colonies that still occupied human space. At New Busan, where 3 million people waited. We continue. They wanted war. We're going to show them what human war actually looks like. The Vrelian queen received the reports aboard her command ship near the Vrelian homeworld. She had dismissed the humans as weak, as civilized to the point of helplessness. She had thought their threats were empty. Threshold Station's wreckage proved otherwise. Her species had just relearned a lesson the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity had not evolved past violence. They had simply chosen to set it aside. And when they picked it back up, they wielded it with the skill of a species that had perfected warfare through thousands of years of practice. The Queen clicked orders to her remaining fleet commanders. Prepare defenses. Fortify positions. The humans were coming, and nobody in the galaxy knew how to stop them anymore. Fleet Admiral Biora Kim stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Defiant, watching 3 colony worlds appear on the tactical display. Her brother Taeyon commanded the Northern Fleet. She commanded the main battle group, 52 warships, carrying 30,000 Marines and enough firepower to reduce planets to glass. She had no intention of doing that. But the Vrelians needed to believe she would. Status on the occupied colonies? She asked her intelligence officer. New Jeju has approximately 200,000 human civilians, mostly concentrated in the capital city. Vrelian forces are using them as shields, positioning military assets inside civilian districts. Colony 7 has smaller population centers, more spread out. New Gwangju is industrial, mostly mining operations with Vrelian workers outnumbering humans 3-1. Biora studied the layouts. The Vrelians had learned from Threshold. They wouldn't fight in open space where human tactics dominated. They would force close-quarters combat, urban warfare. Situations where superior numbers and defensive positions could offset human advantages. Prepare for planetary assault, she ordered. But I want precision strikes only. No bombardment of civilian areas. We go in on the ground. Her executive officer looked concerned. Admiral, that will cost us casualties. We could soften the targets first, reduce their defensive capability, and kill our own people in the process, Biora replied. No, we do this the hard way. Captain Kyung-Soo Lee commanded the 1st Marine Division. 5,000 soldiers in powered armor equipped with weapons that made Council security forces look like ceremonial guards. He had studied every urban battle in human history. From Stalingrad to the colony, separation wars. He knew what was coming. His forces dropped from orbit in armored pods, punching through the atmosphere of New Jeju in trails of fire. Virulent anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky, destroying 12 pods before they could land. Lee felt each loss, 60 Marines per pod. Soldiers he had trained with and commanded for years. The remaining pods hit the ground hard, crash landing in streets and parks across the occupied city. Marines emerged with weapons ready, immediately taking fire from Vrelian positions in surrounding buildings. Squads 1 through 5 established perimeter. Lee shouted over the command net. 6 through 10, move on the detention centers. 11 through 15, secure the civilian evacuation routes. Nobody fires on a building unless you have positive identification of enemy combatants. Am I clear? Confirmations came back from his squad leaders. The Marines moved through the streets with practiced efficiency. Their armor absorbing Vrelian weapons fire while they returned precise shots that dropped enemy soldiers without bringing down buildings. Sergeant Mingi Wang led her squad toward a detention center, where intelligence said 3,000 human civilians were being held. The building was surrounded by Vrelian defensive positions, bunkers and weapon emplacements that covered every approach. We need to get those people out without getting them killed, she told her squad. Ideas. Corporal Geneseo Park pointed to a drainage system marked on their tactical maps. Storm sewers run under the building. We could breach from below, come up inside their perimeter. MG nodded. Do it. Half the squad comes with me. The rest provide covering fire to keep their attention on the street.
how they split up.
Minji led her team into the sewers, waist-deep in foul water, navigating by infrared in the darkness. The system brought them to a position directly under the detention center. They placed breaching charges, counted down, and blew a hole straight up into the building's basement. The blast stunned the Varelian guards on the lower level. Minji's squad came through the hole with weapons ready, dropping guards before they could react. The human prisoners, locked in converted storage rooms, heard the fighting and started shouting. "Everybody stay calm," Minji yelled. "We're human Marines. We're here to get you out." They forced open the locked doors, releasing terrified families who had been imprisoned for weeks. An older woman grabbed Minji's arm. There were children upstairs, separated from their parents. The Varelians took them. Minji felt rage burn through her chest. "Show me where." The woman led them up a maintenance stairwell. On the second floor, they found a room full of children. 50 or 60 kids from toddlers to teenagers, all crying or huddled in fear. Varelian guards stood at the exits, using the children as living shields. "You cannot enter." One guard clicked through a translator. "We will harm the young ones if you advance." Minji's finger tightened on her trigger. She wanted to shoot, to make these creatures pay for terrorizing children. But she was a Marine, not a murderer. She lowered her weapon. "Let them go," she said. "You can surrender and walk away alive. Or you can die here. Your choice." The guard hesitated. Then energy weapons fire came from behind the Marines. Minji spun, saw more Varelians rushing up the stairs. They were trapped between two enemy forces with 50 children in the middle. Her squad opened fire, their weapons on precision mode, dropping the advancing Varelians with headshots that avoided over-penetration. The guards near the children started to raise their weapons. Minji threw herself forward, tackling the nearest one, her armored weight crushing its chitinous body. Her squad followed, abandoning their guns to fight hand-to-hand rather than risk hitting children. It was brutal. Armor-enhanced punches broke Varelian exoskeletons. Marines took wounds from energy weapons fired at close range, their armor absorbing damage meant to kill. But within 90 seconds, every enemy guard was down. Not one child was harmed. Minji stood up, breathing hard, pain screaming from her ribs where a Varelian had gotten a shot through her armor. "Everybody out. Now. Follow me." They led the children down through the building, meeting other squads who had secured the lower floors. The detention center fell within an hour. 3,000 humans rescued, 47 Marines wounded, 8. Minji looked at the casualty reports and felt sick. She knew those names, shared meals with them, trained with them. Now they were gone because the council wouldn't act and the Varelians wouldn't stop. The fighting continued across New Jeju for 3 days. Captain Lee coordinated precision strikes, urban warfare that avoided civilian casualties while systematically dismantling Varelian defensive positions. His Marines paid in blood for every block, every building, every meter of ground. On the 4th day, the Varelian commander on New Jeju surrendered. The colony was liberated, but the cost showed in the faces of Lee's surviving Marines. They had won, but winning hurt. Fleet Admiral Biora received reports from all 3 colony worlds. New Jeju, liberated, 1,800 Marine casualties. 200 civilian deaths from Varelian actions before the assault. Colony 7, liberated, fewer casualties due to dispersed fighting. New Gwangju, still in progress. Heavy fighting in the industrial sectors. She also received intelligence that made her blood run cold. The Varelian Queen had deployed a biological weapon against the human colony of New Inchen. A plague engineered to target human biology, released in the water supply before the marine assault could reach the planet. 80,000 civilians dead before human medical teams could establish quarantine. Families, children, elderly, dying in agony while Varelian forces evacuated and left them to suffer. Biora stood alone in her quarters, reading the medical reports. She thought about mercy, about the rules of war, about the line between justice and revenge. The Varelians had crossed every line. They had used children as shields, released biological weapons, committed atrocities that the galaxy thought been relegated to ancient history. She opened a secure channel to Earth. President Jae-Sung-ko appeared on her screen, his face gray with grief. He had seen the same reports. "Admiral," he said quietly, "do what needs to be done. End this. Make sure they never do this again." Biora nodded. "Understood, sir." Ko addressed humanity that night in a broadcast that reached every colony, every ship, every human in space. His voice was steady, but carried the weight of 80,000 dead. "We did not start this war," he said. "We sought peace through every channel available. We trusted the Council. We followed the rules. And the Vrelians spat on our trust, invaded our homes, imprisoned our families, and murdered our children with weapons of plague and terror." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we will finish it. We will ensure the Vrelian hierarchy never threatens another species. We will show the galaxy that humanity does not start fights, but we will absolutely end them. To the Vrelians, you wanted to see what we were capable of. You're about to find out." The Council, watching from their crystal chambers, convened emergency sessions. Speaker Velshera contacted Ambassador Dayun Park personally. "You must stop," Velshera pleaded. "The biological weapon was unauthorized, a rogue action by extremist elements. The Queen has disavowed it. Please, you are destabilizing the entire galactic order."
Oh.
Doyun's response was ice. "You had the power to prevent this war. You chose not to use it. You prioritize process over protection, procedure over people. Every human who has died, every civilian murdered, every child orphaned. That blood is on the Council's hands as much as the Vrelians. We did not release biological weapons." "No," Doyun agreed. "You just created a system that allowed those who would—" "The difference doesn't matter much to the dead." She closed the channel and looked out at the stars. The human fleet was moving on the Vrelian homeworld now. The war was entering its final phase. One way or another, it would end soon, but the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had reminded everyone of a truth the Council had tried to forget: peace without the will to defend. It was just surrender wearing a prettier name. And humans would never surrender again. The human fleet emerged from faster than light, travel at the edge of the Vrek system. 68 warships, battle-scarred from weeks of fighting, formed into attack formation around Admiral Taeyoung Kim's flagship. On every tactical display, the Vrelian homeworld hung like a green and brown jewel, orbited by defense stations and protected by the remnants of their once mighty. Fleet Queen Skraxiel watched from her command bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. Her forces had been devastated. 18 systems lost, 7 colony worlds liberated by human marines, mining operations across 3 sectors destroyed. Her military had learned to fear the humans. These creatures that fought with a skill and ferocity the galaxy had forgotten was possible. But this was her homeworld. Here, she had orbital defense platforms built over centuries. Here, she had 40 warships, veterans of the recent fighting who knew human tactics. Here, she had a population of 8 billion willing to defend their world. She would make the humans pay for every meter. Admiral Kim broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring the entire system could hear. "Queen Skraxiel, your military is broken. Your colonies are liberated. Your invasion of human space has failed. I offer terms: unconditional surrender and full reparations for every human life lost, every colony damaged. You have 1 hour to respond." The Queen's reply came quickly. "Never. You may have won battles, but you cannot take our homeworld. We have defenses you cannot imagine. We have billions willing to fight. Leave now or die here." Kim had expected this. He looked at his fleet commanders on the communication screens. His sister Biora, Captain Jinwoo Han, promoted after his victories at Colony 7, Commander G1. Song officers who had learned warfare through blood and sacrifice. "Prepare for assault," he ordered. "But remember the rules of engagement. Military targets only. No bombardment of civilian populations. We are not the Vrelians." The battle for Vrex began with precision strikes against the orbital defense platforms. Human missiles, guided by intelligence gathered over weeks of warfare, found weak points in shields and armor. The platforms fought back, their energy weapons scoring hits against human vessels. But one by one, they fell silent. Captain Sung-Ho Park's destroyer Soul's Wrath took a direct hit from a defense platform, the blast tearing through his ship's port side. Emergency bulkheads sealed, but 17 crew members died in the explosion. Sung-Ho gripped his command chair, rage and grief warring in his chest. "Return fire," he ordered. "Target their weapons arrays. Make them pay." The Varelian fleet engaged at close range, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm human tactical superiority. It was brutal fighting, ships exploding in the darkness, debris fields expanding with every passing minute. But the humans had learned too much, adapted too well. They fought with a cold efficiency that ground down Varelian resistance. After 6 hours of orbital combat, Admiral Kim contacted the Queen again. "Your defense fleet is destroyed. Your orbital platforms are offline. Surrender now and prevent further bloodshed." The Queen refused again. "You will not take our world. We will fight you in the streets, in every building, every home. You will drown in Varelian blood before you conquer us." Kim felt tired. He had been fighting for 6 weeks, watched thousands of his people die, made decisions that would haunt him forever. He didn't want to invade this world. He didn't want to fight a population of billions in urban warfare that would cost millions of lives on both sides. But he had his orders. End the war. Make sure it could never happen again. "Very well," he said. "We're coming down." Green dropships launched from the carriers, tens of thousands of armored soldiers descending through the atmosphere. But they didn't head for cities. Instead, they targeted military installations, communication centers, government buildings. The strategy was decapitation, not conquest. Sergeant Mingji Wang, recovered from her injuries on New Jeju, led her squad into the main military command center outside the capital city. Varelian soldiers fought desperately, but they were demoralized, exhausted, facing enemies who seemed unstoppable. The command center fell in 2 hours. Similar assaults happened across the planet. Power stations that supplied military bases. Communication arrays that coordinated defense. Government buildings where orders originated. The humans struck with surgical precision, crippling the Queen's ability to coordinate resistance without harming civilian infrastructure. Queen Scraxel sat in her bunker watching her command network collapse. Reports came in of human forces taking position after position. But they weren't killing civilians. They weren't burning cities. They were systematically dismantling her ability to fight. She finally understood what humanity had been trying to tell her from the beginning. They didn't want to conquer. They didn't want to dominate. They just wanted their people safe, and they would do absolutely anything to ensure that safety. "Contact the human commander," she ordered her communications officer. "I wish to discuss terms." The surrender happened in a ruined military headquarters on the outskirts of the Varelian capital. Queen Scraxel arrived with her advisors, her chitinous body showing signs of stress and age. Admiral Kim met her with his senior officers, humans who had fought across a dozen worlds to reach this moment. The terms were harsh but fair. The Varelians would withdraw from all disputed territories. They would pay reparations calculated to rebuild every damaged colony, to compensate families of every casualty. They would submit to war crimes tribunals for those responsible for the biological weapon attack. Their military would be reduced and monitored, but they would keep their homeworld, keep their sovereignty, keep their right to exist as a species. "Why?" the Queen asked, genuinely confused. "You could destroy us, take our worlds, make us servants?" Kim looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. "Because we're not you. We fight when we have to. We destroy what threatens us, but we don't become the monsters we fight against. That's what makes us different." The galaxy watched as humanity established military occupation of Varelian space. Council observers expected brutality, expected revenge, expected the kind of atrocities that had marked ancient human history. Instead, they saw discipline. Human military governors ensured Varelian civilians had food, water, medical care. War crimes tribunals operated under strict legal procedures. Prosecuting those responsible for atrocities while protecting the innocent. Reparations were structured to be painful, but not economically devastating, allowing the Vrelian economy to function while paying their debt. Ambassador Dayun Park addressed the Galactic Council. One final time, the chamber was silent as she spoke, every delegate remembering the last time a human had stood in this place. Humanity will not rejoin the council, she said. Your system failed us when we needed it most, but we offer something new, the Treaty of Reciprocal Defense. She projected the treaty terms for all to see. Any species that signed would receive military protection from humanity if attacked. In exchange, they agreed to mutual defense obligations, to support human-led operations against aggression, to maintain basic military capability rather than relying entirely on council bureaucracy. We're not asking you to abandon the council, Dayun continued. We're asking you to remember that peace requires the will to defend it. The galaxy has forgotten that truth. We won't let it forget again. 7 species signed within the first week. The Calarian Union, tired of Vrelian bullying. The Markov Federation, impressed by human military competence. 5 others who had experienced aggression and found council responses inadequate. By the end of the month, 20 species had joined. The council's monopoly on galactic order fractured like ice under pressure. Captain Ginwoo Han, now promoted to admiral for his service during the war, oversaw construction of the Terran Defense Coalition headquarters. It orbited a neutral world, deliberately positioned outside both council and human direct control. Ships from a dozen species docked at its stations, their crews training together, learning human military doctrine. One day, Admiral Han stood in the observation deck watching a mixed squadron run combat drills. Quilarian fighters flew alongside human destroyers, Markov cruisers coordinating with Belvari frigates. It looked chaotic compared to rigid council formations, but it worked. Commander So-Yan Nam, his executive officer, joined him. Some of the council species are calling us warmongers. They say we've destabilized the galaxy. Maybe we have, Han admitted. But a stable system that allows invasion and genocide isn't worth preserving. Do you think we did the right thing? Han thought about the 230,000 humans who had died during the war. Soldiers who had volunteered knowing they might not come home. Civilians murdered by weapons of plague. Children orphaned. Lives destroyed. I think we did what we had to do, he said finally. Whether it was right, history will decide. On Earth. President Jae-Sung Ko presided over the dedication of the memorial wall. 230,000 names carved in black stone. Every human who had died during the war. Families came to touch the names, to remember, to grieve. Ko stood before the crowd, looking at faces marked by loss. We paid a terrible price for the council's peace. For 50 years, we trusted a system that valued procedure over justice. We learned the hard way that peace without the will to defend it is just surrender in slow motion. He gestured to the memorial. These names represent our sacrifice, but they also represent our resolve. We will never again allow bureaucracy to substitute for protection. We will stand ready. We will remain vigilant. And we will defend not just ourselves, but any species willing to stand with us. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, people began to applaud. Not in celebration, but in acknowledgement. They had learned what their ancestors already knew, that civilization required both compassion and strength. That peace was something worth fighting for. The Galactic Council continued its work, diminished, but still relevant for the species that trusted its processes. But it no longer held absolute authority. The humans had shown that alternatives existed. The Vrelian hierarchy, chastened and reformed under occupation, eventually joined the Terran Defense Coalition as junior partners. Queen Scraxel had been replaced by a council of elected leaders who understood that aggression carried consequences humanity was willing to enforce, and across the galaxy, species began to remember something the council had tried to make them forget, that the universe was not inherently peaceful, that threats existed. That protection required more than just diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. It required the will to fight, the strength to win, the wisdom to know when war was necessary, and the discipline to end it without becoming monsters? Humanity had reminded the galaxy of these truths, and in doing so, they became the reluctant guardians of a new order. One built not on bureaucratic procedure but on the simple promise, attack us or our allies, and we will respond with everything we have. The galaxy was safer for it, even if it took a war to make that safety possible, even if the price had been paid in blood and grief in 230,000 names carved in stone. The humans stood watch now, and they would never forget why.